YouTube had to turn around. Hey y'all, it's your girl Morgan Renee, tuning in with y'all for another reading of the Hood Health Handbook. These lights is lighting. Yes, anyhow, we're on YouTube and Facebook today. I'm gonna just hop right into it. My last video was kind of short because it cut off for some reason, but we were in a section where they were actually. So this book doesn't just focus on Black people; it talks about Asians, Hispanics, and it got authors from a myriad of those cultural backgrounds as well. So, starting up again on page 82, um, under the title called "Fat and Drunk in East Asia" by Supreme Understanding, and it reads. When people think about East Asian countries like Japan, China, and Korea, they don't think about obesity and poor health. We conjure up images of monks doing Tai Chi, people eating tofu with every meal, doctors using traditional herbal medicine instead of Western drugs, and ridiculously petite women everywhere we look. But I've spent a decent amount of time in both Thailand and Japan, and perception is not reality. While people in the East certainly are healthier than people in the West, it's not like everyone out there is healthy. In fact, you'll find people drinking heavily, chain smoking, and eating fast food every day in many of those countries. Of course, we know that most of that started when Europeans came over, studied the opium wars. But it started, but it's getting worse every day. That's why you've probably seen that video of the 2-year-old Indonesian boy smoking cigarettes like a pro, or heard about the wild drunkenness that is common among Japanese business executives. Sure, the traditional Chinese diet is healthier than our diet, but people don't really eat like that anymore unless they live in small towns and villages. Since the first McDonald's in China opened in 1990, China has become the number one growth market for McDonald's outside of the U.S. And with 960 restaurants and over 60,000 employees, KFC, which opened there in 1987, now has around 2,200 stores dotted across China's 465 cities. That tells you it's not long until the rest of the world ends up sick like the people here. Talking about America, USA. While American style fatness is still pretty rare, the rates of obesity are steadily rising throughout East Asia, and the large number of cancer patients, 6.2 million compared to 1.6 million in North America and 3.4 million in Europe, could be traced to excess body weight, according to a recent study. The most obese countries in Asia are Japan and South Korea, where 3.2% of the population has a BMI over 30. Not bad compared to America, where over 33% are obese. But it's a sign of a growing trend. And not only are the Japanese and Koreans the most obese Asians, they also have the worst drinking habits. Studies show that Koreans and Japanese drink the most alcohol and do the most binge drinking out of all Asians. Why them? Think about what those two countries have in common. Both were conquered by the U.S. military. After the Korean War and World War II, where the U.S. dropped a nuclear bomb on Japan, both countries were rebuilt by the U.S. And in the process, of course, they were taught to love America and Western culture, kind of like Reconstruction for blacks and American. I'm doing this because it got quotes around those words. Um, they were taught to love America and Western culture, kind of like Reconstruction for blacks in American following slavery, if you know the real history. Before World War II, sumo wrestling was the national sport of Japan. After World War II, it was baseball. Soon enough, other aspects of Western culture found a home where it had been previously rejected. At one point, East Asians identified with the black struggle in America, but now they've got American style racism there. Back in the day, East Asia rejected everything European, whether political or cultural, since they're all related. That's why it took so long for McDonald's and KFC to get in the door. But now, as McDonald's CEO Jim Skinner explains, things are different. We do extensive focus group studies on Chinese consumers, and one of the things that Chinese consumers say over and over again is that we come to you because you are a Western brand. If we want to eat rice or congee we can eat at home or in Chinese restaurants, we want to sample the Western brand. In fact, some mental illnesses only found among Western white people, like anorexia, are now emerging in places like Korea as well. So, what's the cause behind the poor health that's developing among Japanese and Koreans? The same cause behind the poor health that's nearly destroyed the rest of us here in America. And to drive the point home, Asians who were born in America have much poorer health, more obesity, more mental health problems, and worse drinking habits than Asians who were not born here. That should tell you something about this land of opportunity you live in. Mm. Don't accept what's forced upon you. If the people around you are a negative influence, teach or leave them. Use this book. What's new? 12 Modern Dietary Changes by Supreme Understanding. In the macrobiotic diet, Michio Kushi writes, we are what we eat. Change of what we eat changes our physical, psychological, and spiritual conditions. Change of body, mind, and spirit results in the change of social and cultural expression as well as personal health and development. Kushi notes 12 major dietary changes in modern times. Loss of principal food. The consumption of whole grains, the principal food of all previous civilizations, has declined sharply, and grains are now mostly eaten refined, not whole. Increased consumption of animal food. Meat, poultry, eggs, dairy products, and fish have replaced grains and beans at the center of the modern meal. Increased consumption of sugar. Many foods today contain sugar, honey, and other sweeteners, including artificial ones. Change in vegetable consumption. People today eat only a few vegetables like tomatoes, potatoes, lettuce, and cucumber. These are mass produced with chemical fertilizers. Often they are canned or frozen, not fresh. Change in fruit consumption. Wild and naturally cultivated fruits have been replaced by uniform hybrid species. People eat more canned, frozen, and sugar treated fruit, fruit juice, and fruit from different climatic zones than fresh or naturally dried native fruit. Change in legume use. Beans and lentils used to be the principal source of protein. Today they are fed mainly to animals. Emergence of non-essential foods. Candy bars, soft drinks, ice cream sandwiches, and other non-essential snack foods are being consumed in vast quantities. They are usually packed with sugar, fat, salts, and chemicals. Change in farming quality. Natural farming has been replaced by modern methods which rely heavily on chemical fertilizers, pesticides, and other chemical sprays. Salt and change in salt quality. Natural unrefined sea salt has been replaced with refined salt. This salt lacks other minerals that are essential for health. Rise in vitamin consumption. Natural vitamins have been removed from modern foods, and a few are replaced by synthetic vitamins that often wash off or can't be processed by our bodies properly. Many people take vitamin pills and supplements instead of getting nutrients naturally. Rise of artificial foods and cooking methods. Thousands of synthetic chemicals, most of which have not been tested for their safety, have been added to modern foods. Microwaves and deep fryers have replaced cooking with natural fire. Mm. Rise in biogenetically engineered food. These include foods that combine the genes of animals and plants, such as tomatoes that contain fish genes to give them a longer shelf life. Foods are also being irradiated to make them last longer. Use this knowledge to elevate and gradually make changes to your diet. Take the Are You a Healthy quiz again and compare scores. We started this Captain Planet thing. The original foundation for vegetarianism and environmentalism by CB's I Life Allah. The righteous, the self-righteous granola eating hippie comes into your hood. They have lettuce sandwich stuck in between their teeth, all the while going on about saving the rabbits. They go into a long sermon about how you aren't supposed to eat meat and how you should be saving Mother Nature. If you break down their speech, it will basically sound like this: Y'all, original slash indigenous people are fucked up. We know we white folk know what is best for y'all because y'all are too stupid to realize this. Our way slash solution slash idea is the best and the most appropriate approach to any situation. We got some of this information from original slash indigenous people, yet that doesn't matter because we're the owners of this information now. Not eating meat. Let's start with vegetarians, specifically vegans, who don't eat any type of animal or animal byproduct for health and ethical reasons. Mm, good apple cider. The way that the majority of mainstream white vegans operate is no different than Christian missionaries during the age of European imperialism. They work to impose their diet and views on people using guilt, shame, and in many cases, force. Because the vegan terminology is loaded with much of the baggage from white supremacy, many original slash indigenous slash people of color have adopted different terminologies to refer to their eating habits. Some of these terms are decolonized diet, pure vegetarianism, plant centric diet, green gangster, right foods, and eating to live. Regardless of the term, what everyone must realize is that white people didn't start this vegan stuff. If you look at Europe, ancient and modern. They have the most meat saturated diet in the world. This has always been true. The only time that there has been any tradition of vegetarianism anywhere in Europe was among a small group of Greek philosophers who were influenced by their studies in Egypt. Europeans do not have any vegetarian traditions to build a modern day tradition of vegetarianism on. In fact, once they colonized the Americas, they began to export their surplus meat back to Europe. This is that foundation on which the American meat and potatoes diet has been built. This is also the beginning of the lie that vegetarians are going to suffer from protein and calcium due to lack of meat or dairy products. Now, when you flip it and start looking at original slash indigenous people of color all over the world, you will find diets that are not meat centric. Meat is served as a side dish, if at all. This practice is found embedded in many religions outside of Europe that naturally grew out of cultural practices. In East Asia, you will find vegetarianism in the traditions of Hinduism, especially the Vaishnavas sects that worship Vishnu. Jainism, Buddhism, about half of all Buddhists worldwide practice vegetarianism, and among some sects, SECTS, and in some sects of Sikhism, I don't know if I'm saying it right, Sikhism. Christian traditions outside of Europe, like many of the monastic traditions in North Africa, have traditionally practiced a vegetarian diet. In fact, a lot of the Eastern Christianity traditions, such as the Coptic Orthodox Church of Alexandria, excuse me, the Oriental Orthodox churches, and the Ethiopic Coptic Orthodox Church, practice vegan fasting during Lent. They also fast during other periods, as many as 210 days out of the year. Taoists, some members of the Baha'i faith, and some Sufi orders of Islam all practice forms of vegetarianism. And let's not forget the Rastafarian tradition of Ital, which forbids the eating of flesh, artificially preserved foods, and foods that have been salted, artificially flavored, or chemically altered in any way. Excuse me. The above examples are rooted in the religions of the original slash indigenous slash people of color, yet even if you put religion aside and examine only the cultures, you will not find eating traditions that worship meat. For instance, in pre-Columbus America, there were no animals that were domesticated purely for food stock, unlike Europeans' domestication of chickens, cattle, and pigs. Meat in early America was an incidental part of the diet. Though the image of the Plains Indians has become part of Americana lore, these were, generally speaking, the only native peoples whose culture revolved around a single animal, the bison. The Plains Indians' bond with the bison is not the same as post industrial America's obsession with pseudo meats. The Plains Indians revered the bison and didn't waste any part of the animal. By looking at the religious and cultural traditions of non white people, you can tell one thing: we have vegetarian traditions that go far beyond them sticking their nose in our business, killing meat. In the world outside of Europe, people have always had a close connection with their food source. A disconnect occurred in Europe early on for two reasons. For one, only the wealthy were allowed to hunt. Secondly, American colonists began to ship their meat surplus to Europe. Outside of Europe, religious traditions were always concerned that compassion be shown toward one's source of nourishment. Orthodox Jews have a tradition of shashita, by which the trachea, esophagus, carotid arteries, and jugular veins of an animal are cut using a super sharp blade, killing the animal instantly and painlessly. This also allows the animal's blood to drain out almost immediately. From this, there are no European traditions which promote the compassionate killing of animals. Now, when you check into the rest of the world, you have the Jahakta tradition of Hinduism, by which an animal is slain by a single sword or axe stroke, which passes through the spine, killing the animal instantly. The Dahaivaha tradition of Islam, a quick incision into the neck, which slices the jugular veins and carotid arteries, or even the Ikijimi tradition in Japan, a method paralyzing and bleeding fish by inserting a spike quickly into the hindbrain, which causes an immediate and painless death and maintains quality. Even the native nations in the Americas realize that you shouldn't scare the animals that you are hunting. When an animal knows it is about to be killed, it floods its body with adrenaline and other hormones that saturate the meat, making it tough and causing its flesh to be a repository for hormones which aren't good for humans to digest. PETA punks. For those who don't know, PETA, or People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, is an organization that is devoted to the protection of animals. This organization is racist to the core. As you can see in the preceding paragraphs, original people have always had a peaceful relationship with animals. A peaceful relationship with animals does not translate into an abnormal relationship with animals that borders on or crosses the line into bestiality. People that know me know that I ain't no PETA pet. I rarely use the term vegan because it has been co opted by white anorexic women in recovery or on the down low. And frankly, PETA been slipping too close into bestiality for me to really be feeling them. All in all, I see that PETA overemphasizes the welfare of animals as opposed to showing an interest in the effects of post colonialism, racism, genocide, and slavery that continue to plague original peoples. So, rolling with PETA pets oftentimes make me nauseous. For example, in order to get their point across, at one point PETA decided to compare animal cruelty to the slavery of African Americans without even thinking or not caring that they were comparing African Americans to animals. They also tend to have a racist focus when it comes to choosing their battles. This is why PETA organized to vilify Michael Vick or Latino cockfights, but don't expend as much effort to shut down white politicians that hunt animals for sport or chicken farms. Rooted in white culture and an unnatural relationship with animals, this is fully exposed and projected in their vegan and anti animal cruelty movements. It is not enough for them to save animals. They have to welcome them as full members of their families. And I don't even want to have to mention how often you see those toy dogs being kissed by white females. Pets in the white household are exalted above other human races. How many animal rescue commercials do you in the United States versus commercials encouraging child adoption? Let me go back. I forgot to read a did you know on this last page. Did you know the Aztec armies of South America used to subsist during long marches on chia seeds? Yes, the same ones as the Chia Pet commercials. These seeds are full of nutrition and expand when introduced to water. These Aztec armies would also subsist on balls of quinoa, which is a type of grain indigenous to the Americas. Native nations in the northeast region of North America survived off the three sisters corn, beans, and squash. Corn was a major staple and was found throughout the Americas to the extent that many Native American deities are related to corn. Okay. Then there's another did you know over here on this page. Did you know a study was once conducted which showed an audience scenes of both animals and black males being killed? Guess which scenes elicited the more positive response from a white audience? Mm. Don't kill cats like future serial killers. I hate the damn term animal abuse. No, I ain't starving for dogs, kicking cats, etc. Yet, since this term exists in a legal sense, raising animals to be slaughtered should be termed animal abuse. Oh, wait, you treat it good and then you eat it, so it's okay. Dumbass. This is the same double standard that exists, making it wrong for sanitary practitioners to practice animal sacrifice, but allowing Jewish people to slaughter goats on their holy days. Also, damn it, the farmers are just one slaughtering away from animal abuse. There is something that needs to be said. The PETA types are one end of the spectrum. They are in some cases literally animal lovers. On the other end of the spectrum, you can see the manner in which this post-industrial Western culture applies their standard of white supremacy and racism. There are some animals that are good, basically pets like cats, dogs, and exotic birds, and then there are the lower animals, cattle, chicken, pigs, etc., that you eat because they aren't fully feeling or emotive. This makes it okay for them to be killed brutally. It should come as no surprise that the notion of chattel slavery started amongst those Europeans who traded in livestock. The horrible treatment of animals during the production of food and and goods such as leather is often the duty of poor original people who are forced to labor in this inhumane industry. This impacts the individual workers as well as the community because these factories often leak toxic materials into the surrounding areas. Farms, processing plants, textile factories, etc., are always located on the poor side of town, which is inhabited by poor people of color. During the age of imperialism, when whites entered Africa, Asia, and the Americas, they brought along a narrow focus on cash crops, tobacco, cotton, corn, sugar, which were produced and exported for profit, while the indigenous people were forced to stop growing local sustainable food crops. Needless to say, this messed up the ecology and economics of the indigenous people in all these regions. Now, after having bled these agriculture areas dry, European and American corporations maintain economic power over their many former colonies or banana republics who can't even produce enough food to feed their people. Thus, these former colonies become dependent on Western non foods and were forced to give up their traditional diets. The above reasons are solid reasons to treat animals with compassion. However, one need not go to either extreme. When you look at indigenous methods of animal slaughter, you can see that the indigenous people understood that this is to be done with compassion. Indigenous people also understood that the depletion of natural resources is not an appropriate use of what nature has provided. Mm-mm-mm. Indigenous environmentalism. The biggest joke is when white people come into original communities and try to preach to the original people about the environment. White people have been the number one poisoners of the Earth's environment, hands down. Often they prefer to attack non white people's destruction of the environment instead of dealing with their own historical destruction of the environment. White people also ignore, as a whole, the current devastation of the planet's various ecosystems by white institutions and corporations. The hardest hit countries are those in the third world. Oftentimes, all that original people need from white environmentalists is that they be left alone and that the environmentalists take the rest of the white colonizers home with them. When the Spaniards arrived in the Americas, they brought pigs with them that they then let loose in the forests of America. These pigs reproduced at such a rate that the subsequent European explorers had a ready made food supply. These pigs, however, ate the seeds and shoots of the Native American gardens, destroying large tracts of their agriculture. These domesticated pigs also went feral, growing tusks and becoming aggressive. Whites have stolen and continue to steal gold, ivory, oil, diamonds, uranium, coltan, an element that's used to make cell phones, and various other commodities from Africa. They steal food, vegetation, and even genes by taking the blood of certain native nations and patenting the gene sequence from South America. The gold rush, which occurred in the western United States during the 1800s, flooded the local environment with mercury and sulfur. This after the native nations had been forced westward. There is a current rush on gold and uranium, which is currently flooding the same environment with cyanide. In 1991, the government of the East African nation of Somalia, which is located on the Horn of Africa, collapsed. Its 9 million people have been teetering on the brink of starvation ever since. Many of the ugliest forces in the Western world have since used this instability as an opportunity to steal the country's food supply and dump nuclear waste in their seas. The Somalian fishermen and sailors who lived off the fish in these waters have known about this for years. When they finally decided to fight back with support of the people, the world labeled them as pirates. I can go on. I can also mention the atomic waste that has been left in various Pacific islands in Japan as a result of nuclear weapons testing and use of atomic weapons, or the destruction of the rainforest by Western fast food, cattle magnates, or the huge flotillas of trash in the ocean. I could go on and on. The common theme is that white people need to clean up their own stuff before preaching to other people about environmentalism. Original people have always taken care of the earth. Most indigenous traditions embrace the stewardship of the planet versus the Europeans' doctrine of manifest destiny, the goal being to subdue and conquer the American West and every other corner of the planet, for that matter. This philosophy is rooted in the Bible's book of Genesis 1:28. God blessed them and said to them, "Be fruitful and increase in number, fill the earth and subdue it, rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, and over every living creature that moves on the ground." To get in tune with environmentalism from a people of color perspective, check out the National Black Environmental Justice Network at www.nbejn.org, as well as the Indigenous Environmental Network at www.ienearth.org. Take the above steps to push for environment justice in your community. Well, all right. It's the end of that section. Thank y'all for tuning in. Check in with y'all again soon. Peace.